ADHD Rewired, episode 467. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Marina Piscolish. Did I say it right?
You did.
All right. We had just talked about that about 10 seconds ago, and I already forgot. All right. Well, Marina is the president and founder of Mapping Change, LLC, a small consulting business born of her passion for harnessing the transformative power of conflict to create positive changes for individuals, teams, and organizations. Born in rural Pennsylvania as a coal miner's daughter and the grandchild of immigrants. I feel like you're a politician. Like that's an intro for a politician. The grandchild of immigrants provided helpful preparation for her work, especially in Hawaii and the broader Pacific, as she continues developing ways of working with culture, identity, sense of place, history, and trauma. Her early struggle with her own undiagnosed ADHD was a defining influence on her career and life. Now she focuses on making creative accommodations for her limitations and leverages her neurodivergence as an asset for her business, her clients, and the people close to her. Marina, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Eric. It's lovely to be here.
Well, I don't think we can get too much more of an ADHD start to this our interview here. So starting with, I was looking for my notes from our pre-interview. I could not find them. Our first interview had to be rescheduled because you flooded, right?
Yeah.
And then we were having audio issues and all kinds of stuff. And here we are.
Here we are.
So since I didn't have my notes, you kindly kind of reminded me of our past and things that we've talked about. And, in our coaching groups, one of the things we always tell people, we're really, really proud of our completion rate because we have now about 1,000 people who have gone through our program. And I think we have now 12 people out of 1,000 who haven't made it through all the way to the end. Ladies and gentlemen, I am happy to present to you one of the 12 who didn't make it through to the end. But the story is a good one. So let's start with your story.
Okay. And by that, you mean the story of how I ended up not finishing the coaching group?
Yeah. And how we came to meet and then kind of what happened. Yes, that.
So let me set a context first that describes how I came to know about you. I have a large family. You mentioned I grew up in rural Pennsylvania in a small town, a large family, many of whom have ADHD, but of course, none of us knew what that was. So we thought we were just similar in some interesting ways, and we had similar challenges. And it wasn't really until I stepped out into the wide world and went, wow, not everybody is dealing with all these things that are so common in my family. And it's the first time it dawned on me that I had some differing abilities or limitations. And at some point, the children born in my family, my sister, were diagnosed in school with ADHD. And it was the first, and it still didn't dawn on us that we, as the adults in the family, were all sort of living that reality too. And in trying to find resources to support one of my sister's children, she came across ADHD Rewired and you, and became a real believer for him, not for her. Which, takes a long time for certain things to dawn on us, right? So along the way, she made me aware of it. And I probably 15 years ago began to seriously recognize, maybe 20, that I think I have this. I guess what I would say to you is I ended up in a job. I have been an entrepreneur and I have always fit uncomfortably in any organization or system I was part of. I am a system disruptor, both by my performance, but also by my passions, because I think things should be better and different. And most places are just really comfortable with the status quo. So I'm always bumping up against walls and rules and ways we do things. And so I was struggling. I had made, I made my way. I struggled with my limitations, but I made my way through a graduate program. I ended up creating a center at the University of Delaware. I was struggling to fit inside higher ed comfortably. Mostly, I'm a change management expert, and mostly I want to change the organizations I'm in because I see problems right at home and they're not really interested in that. So I will bring up a point. I went to a therapist and she gave me some very sound advice. She held up two index fingers, pulled them apart from each other. And she said, emotional pain is the distance between this finger, which is your expectations, and this other finger, which is reality. And the further apart those two things are, the more painful it is. And you're constantly living with a lot of distance between your expectations and reality. So while that was applied to sort of my judgment of others, eventually I began to realize that it had to do with my expectations of myself and the reality of what I was able to do. Not having really embraced my ADHD as a thing, I was constantly trying to hide it, work around it, figure a way out of the problems. The other bit of advice she gave me was, as I was complaining about hierarchy, which I have no love for, she said, you're not alone. There are a lot of people that really feel the same way about hierarchy. And I said, thank you for that. I appreciate that. And she said, do you know where they are? I was like, no. She said, they're either unemployed or self-employed.
That's good. That's good.
And I thought, wow, I could have spent a year in this chair. You gave me some very solid insight. And she said, it's kind of unreasonable to join a hierarchy and then judge them for being a hierarchy. I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to chew on that. So I did. And eventually I relocated from Delaware with my husband at the time, who was coming to Hawaii for a job. And I decided to try and take that advice seriously and go it alone. So I started my own business back in the late 90s. So I took the risk to start mapping change. And it turned out that, I'm pretty good at my craft. I'm a mediator, a facilitator, a conflict resolver. I'm a trainer. I'm an educator. I was originally a school teacher by my initial degree. And I'm pretty good at all of that. What I'm not so good at is the business of business. I'm not even a bad business person. I have good products. I have good ideas about marketing. It's the administrivia. It's the knowing where stuff is. It's the keeping systems. And I chased that as a problem, or it chased me for a very long time. I got in trouble, everything from record keeping, tax challenges, different kinds of things that are pretty serious. I got fatigued. And the bigger the problems in the back room got, the more ashamed and unwilling to share or get help, because I didn't know how to get things cleaned up to invite someone in. And I was too embarrassed about I was so judgmental about what seemed unacceptable that I couldn't do. It was just unacceptable that I couldn't do certain things. I had a small enterprise. I wasn't running a major corporation. Why couldn't I do what everybody else seems able to do? And because I couldn't come to terms with that and I couldn't admit it, I couldn't seek the help. I didn't know how to find the help. I didn't know how to admit that to the help. And I didn't know how to maintain my sense of my professionalism, having revealed stuff that I was so ashamed about. So it just, power-wise, just always felt very weird to kind of start on my knees apologizing to somebody I hired to sort paper for me. But I was just so undone by that. So long story short, it was a grind. I was doing really well at work, but eventually, as my career expanded and my opportunities grew, I started to be afraid of them, because the bigger the opportunity, the bigger the risk of failing. And so that distance between my two fingers of expectations and reality kept stretching. My expectations of myself and the reality, the pain was there. It was great. At some point, when I fully embraced the recognition that I had some serious neurodivergence challenges, I became diminished by it. I felt burdened, overwhelmed. I started to adjust the pain by lowering my expectations of myself. I brought that finger closer to reality, and I started playing my life in a smaller way to avoid the pain of success and what comes with that, which is performance challenges. in the mid 2010s, I took a break to care for a family member who was passing on and took care of my dad. And as that period of time, which was kind of like a pause in my career a bit, I got recruited to be part of a sort of a hotshot team of people who do what I do in a university setting. I'd already left a university setting and had some struggles in that setting before, but I thought, you know what? I could use the support. I'm coming in as a senior, so I have support. Maybe this is what I need, is to work with others, to turn over the responsibility for all the business stuff to the organization, and to sort of spend the rest of my career doing this. Well, the job was multiple projects running at once, and they had 3 layers of institutional systems. Lots of paperwork, lots of projecting my hours, lots of just accounting for all kinds of things. And I was flying a lot. I was doing a great job at the work, which is what I love, and I do things well that I love. I wasn't doing so well at all of this other stuff, which I had never been good at, and actually took this job thinking I was avoiding it and instead landed neck deep in it. That brings me to you. I was a few months into the job and I was really concerned that I had made a huge mistake. I moved across the country. I put myself very publicly into this role. I was supposed to be a high flyer and I was flailing. And my sister said, I heard Eric Tivers is doing a coaching group. You should join that coaching group and maybe he can help you figure this out. I didn't know much about you and I hadn't really embraced my neurodivergence yet. I accepted it, but I hadn't embraced it. And
well, let me ask, what to you is the difference between acceptance and embracing?
I guess embracing is trying to figure out how you're going to work with it. Mm. Accepting is deciding to make your life smaller to avoid the problems it creates.
So it's kind of like, it's there. That's accepting.
Yeah.
Embracing is okay. It's there. What can we do about this?
What can we do about this? And I hadn't turned that corner. It was more like, how can I hide it? How can I avoid it being seen? And how can I eliminate the need to run into it as often as possible? That didn't turn out to be what this job did for me. And so I somewhat with some trepidation, I called you and you had asked for a conversation before I joined the coaching group. And we had a conversation and I told you what my situation was. I told you what I had been doing up to that point. And you, to my amazement, said, probably 15 or 20 minutes into the call, well, it sounds like you were doing exactly what you should have been doing before you took this job. Sounds like you loved your consulting, what you did, you were good at it. I don't know why you took this job. I think you should quit. I was like, oh my God.
Was I that explicit?
That is my recollection. Okay. It sounds like you should quit and do what you were doing, but just do it differently. And I was like, well, perhaps, but wow, what a wild thing to say to someone who's living the seriousness of this choice I've just made. I'm like, can we try to make this work first? So that was the first thing. It was direct, it was sort of unambiguous, and it was not in line with where I was even open to entertaining I should be going right now. And so because of both, I may be being startled by that suggestion, wondering if I think I attended a few of these, but at the time I was so overwhelmed by my job and I was traveling, flying a lot all over the state. It was very hard to participate consistently in the schedule of the group. So I gave that as my out. And I just slinked away. I never told you I wasn't coming back. I left the cash on the table and I walked out. Okay, so things continued to sort of blow up. And I continued to think that I was working miracles because I was doing a great job.
What year was this, if you remember?
This was 2017. Okay.
I was trying to think back to from what your recollection was. It's just funny because as I hear that, I'm like, well, that's not a very coach approach kind of a style. So I'm like, maybe either it was taken more directly or I was just more direct and wasn't asking the kinds of questions that I would have asked today.
Well, we all grow with time, but I look at that and go it was profound as the woman who said, where all the people who hate hierarchy are, self-employed or unemployed. It was just that much wisdom in a few words, right? So I appreciate your wondering about, is that what I would do today? And maybe not, but it landed, it just stuck. it stuck where it landed because it was like, well, that may be true. And I'm afraid that may be true, but what do I do about where I am? And that I don't know how to do what he's saying I should do and feel successful. I had not yet felt really like I was firing on all engines as an entrepreneur, that I had, like, it always felt like I was on shaky ground, like a tiger could jump out, something I forgot, something I didn't do, some ball I dropped. And
the house of cards. That's how I often describe that feeling of like, what am I forgetting? Like what's going to be this like big oversight that's just going to make everything come crashing down?
Right. A big enough mistake that I can't just apologize for and move on, right? Something more serious than that. So a few months after you and I had that conversation, to my amazement, because I consider myself to be pretty good at my work, I was invited to, quote, separate from the institution, end quote, which is another word for firing. That was a first, and that was a shock. I had no prior reason to believe that was coming. I had no conversation that this could happen. It happened. Now, I will say this. I don't believe in the end that the reason I was fired was for that reason. That's not important, but it gave me the chance to reset. And that's what then happened. And the story goes on from there.
Well, we will come back with the rest of that story after the break. We will be right back. Do you have every intention of starting that next house project, writing your resume, launching your business, or incorporating a new habit only to lose traction and run out of steam, sometimes before you even start? Have you tried tip after tip, strategy after strategy, only to be left feeling overwhelmed and unsure what to do next? With ADHD reWired's award-winning intensive coaching and accountability groups, you can live an intentional and wholehearted life with ADHD. And with our alumni membership community, you can count on ongoing support after your 10-week coaching season ends, because maintenance is hard and community matters. We kicked off our spring registration last week. We had a great turnout, and a bunch of people took advantage of our big early bird promotional pricing and got $500 off by joining sections led by ADHD reWired's fabulous coaches, Kat Hoyer and Kristen Martz. Would you like to get $500 off registration too? We're extending our early registration incentive to this Thursday's registration event as well, but this offer won't last. Go to coachingrewired.com to get your name added to our spring interest list. Once you've added your name and confirmed your email, don't forget to check your spam folder for that confirmation. You'll receive instructions on how you can join us for our next registration event this week on Thursday, February 9th at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern.
I had lived so many years doing the best I could, and the diagnosis really just opened a door to a whole host of resources that I didn't ever know was there for me. This course seemed to be the holy grail.
The thing I'm most proud of is that in the middle of some pretty intense chaos in my personal life and not knowing really what's going to happen in the future, having kind of the rug pulled out from under me, that I'm still here.
What I did not expect was how quickly I would be able to open up and feel incredibly close to the people in my group, how much I would learn from other people in the group, the value of interacting with people who inherently and intuitively understand the same kinds of things I deal with, and how that makes it easier to work on solutions to move forward without getting trapped in so much shame and self-criticism.
Before this group, I felt overwhelmed with the changes I wanted to make. And to some degree, I still feel that way because there's a lot of things I want to do. And now I realize I can go slow, and that's okay, because it's relearning how to do things that work for my brain and work for me. And going slow will help make them stick. If you're thinking about joining this group, it's worth it to crack your own code.
Yes, life with ADHD has its challenges, and it can feel like we're living life on hard mode. But when you join our award-winning coaching and accountability groups, you'll be provided with a supportive, non-judgmental environment where you can practice using all of the tips and strategies that we share. And you won't have to do any of it alone. So if you've been feeling stuck with managing your ADHD and you're itching to finally gain some forward motion on your most important goals by trying something different with people who just get it, then head on over to coachingrewired.com and start your pre-registration process now so you can join us this week on Thursday, February 9th at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Pre-registration includes watching a 35-minute recorded presentation all about the groups, answering some questions, and sending us a 45-second video all about you. Get your name on that interest list at coachingrewired.com and we'll send you everything you'll need to send us to get invited to our next registration event. Registration is by invitation only. To ensure that we have enough time to process your pre-registration submissions and send you your invitation to the event where you'll actually be registering, please complete your pre-registration requirements by 11:59 p.m. the day prior to our registration events. So go to coachingrewired.com to get started. That's coachingrewired.com. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from you, our listeners who tune in every week. If you're listening to this right now and you are finding value in this episode, then hit subscribe or follow on whatever app you are listening to this on so you don't miss out on our weekly episodes. Like episode 444, where I had a conversation with Rick Webster about the ADHD tax and managing finances. While you're in your podcast app, we could really use some fresh reviews. So if you've been meaning to leave one, if you can pause us here and drop us a review, we would really appreciate it. We'll be here when you come back. If you did just pause it and left us a review, thank you. And if you like ADHD Rewired, you'll also enjoy some of the other shows that we have on the ADHD Rewired podcast network, including Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb and ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens. And for the parents and those who work with kids, ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan. Go to ADHDrewired.com/podcast network to find all of our shows and get updated when our new shows will be launched. Then you can hang out with me and the rest of the ADHD Rewired team every second Tuesday of the month for our monthly live Q&A. Go to ADHDrewired.com and click on the events tab at the top of the page so you can register to join us on Zoom. That's ADHDrewired.com/events to register to join us live and ask your ADHD related questions. That's every second Tuesday of the month at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. Our next one is on Valentine's Day, so we'd love to have you join us. And there are no stupid questions. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this show every week. We wouldn't be here without you. That's ADHDrewired.com. All right, we are back. So when we left off at the break, you said that you were invited to part ways. And now for the rest of the story.
Okay, so that was a stunner. And I flailed for a little while thinking about where to go next. I felt like I had not succeeded in terms that I wanted to as an entrepreneur or a business person. I clearly was still challenged at working inside an institution comfortably, and that didn't seem to be a great escape from the administrivia that I had been burdened by in my own work. So,
okay, so Marie, that's the second time I heard you use the word administrivia. Is that a real word?
I don't know, but I've always used it because it's a whole set of things that the bane of my existence.
Like I totally know what you mean by the word, like the activities of administrative work.
Yes, yes. And I'm sorry for anyone that is their love and they're really good at it. But in my world, it's just been such a pain point. Yeah. So I realized that I had a false theory that if I went to work for someone, that they would take care of all that. They just passed it on to me. And I had less power or ability to ignore it as I did in my own organization. So I'll just fast forward you to sort of where things get to. I then start taking really seriously the fact that I have ADHD. And I start being curious about what it is I can do about it. I watch some videos, I read some books, I start making some accommodations in my life, and I start getting my head around how to live comfortably with my sense of my limitation, but also to explore more fully how that neurodivergence is really the cause for my success in the work that I do, how it is the joy in my life, in my ability to make connections or find humor, or so many ways that as I come to better understand the upside of ADHD, that I wouldn't trade those things to get rid of the downside. So now I just have to make better strategies for accommodating it and celebrating it. And so that is a few year process happening, and it's getting better. I'm getting stronger. But really, the truth of it is like I have an epiphany when I finally find someone that I can hire, who I can reveal my neurodivergence to without risk of being judged or minimized by them. And instead, working in concert with someone who both appreciates what my gifts are, but then loves being in a position to help support and help me overcome my limitations. It gives her essentialness, but it also, it feels like for the first time, I'm working with a full deck, that I have all the tools I need. And it's not because I have all the tools, but I've gathered the tools. She helps provide them. And we've created systems and solutions for things that had long troubled me. So the good news is that during COVID, I really appreciated the quiet. In that quiet, as everything in my work, which is largely in person and highly personal, mediation facilitation, it got very quiet because people were not doing that same kind of work virtually. And I, having attention issues, managing group dynamics over technology, watching people's body language, and then watching the chat and noticing I don't know. There was it's not my wheelhouse to be watching 42 channels at the same time while I'm trying to follow a conversation and bring healing or solution finding to something. So I'm like, man, what am I going to do in this new world? Along the way, I came to have an idea about a creative project. I hired someone to help me. It's a technology-based set of tools and solutions, which I wouldn't have had the confidence to do without someone who both could work with my neurodivergence, but also had a whole other set of technology skills and things. So I just, I find myself doing the best work of my life with the greatest amount of ease and joy. And it's because I have accepted my neurodivergence and I have sought the support needed to address it, both meditation, medication, and assistance.
So let me ask you about that last part, the assistance. What did you, like when you were seeking out the help, your assistant, what did you communicate with your assistant when you were going through the interviewing process? Because I think that for a lot of entrepreneurs with ADHD, there's this constant fear of being found out. Yeah. And one of the things that I have learned from my own experiences, and it sounds like you have as well, is like, not only do you not fear being found out, like shine the spotlight on what the thing is that you are struggling with and check in with that person and see how how does that sit with them? So how did you do that?
Well, if I were just running an HR operation where I put out an ad, but this person came to me through another context of relationship. Okay. She was coached by me and she worked for a fellow colleague. So she had come to me in relationship with admiration for who I was and what I could do. So I was branded, right, as someone who was worthy of respect, working with, and getting to know. So that helps. So she already had high expectations of me. And then we got to know each other and I got to revealing some projects I was working on that had to do with that sort of the backlog of administrivia. And she had particularly good executive functioning skills. We started talking about that task and she started offering ideas and I could see her enthusiasm for I could figure this out. So it kind of started not first by talking about my identity as neurodivergent, but these sort of backlog tasks that were quite messy to get into. And I tested her resilience for that sort of thing, right? She sort of rolled up her sleeves metaphorically and said, this wouldn't be hard. You just do this and you do this. And I'm like, oh my God, this feels like rocket science to me. What you're talking about is high level art.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I was actually just having a conversation with my son, who's 11, neurodivergent. So I'm planning on at some point this year taking him to Mexico, and right now the huge hurdle for me is filling out the passport forms for him that I have attempted to do now 3 times and I've made mistakes on them, and you can't have mistakes on the passport forms, and it's like rocket science, and paperwork for so many of us with ADHD. I call it my kryptonite. Like,
It is.
especially government forms that have to be so precise.
I mean, I can't take a multiple choice test or true and false because I want to talk to the person who built the thing about what they meant by the question. And if I answer it this way, it's this answer. So when I look at a form and it's like, if there's nobody to consult with, I put things in the wrong place. I put wrong dates. I lose the form halfway through filling it out.
Missed
whole
fields.
sections.
Yep. Oh my God.
So one of the things, once I tested, her name is Jessica, who I found to work with. Once I tested Jessica's resolve to sort of not be fearful or seeming judgmental, like tisk, how did you let it get like this kind of thing? I really don't respond well to that kind of negative feedback. So I was very sensitive about it, exposing myself to someone who would make me feel bad at this point. And she did none of that. Instead, she sort of rose to the occasion and wanted to help with enthusiasm. And so little by little, I revealed other things. And then at some point, I just sort of fully embraced the conversation, said, look, I've never hired someone to work with me because I've never been willing to reveal what it is I'm willing to reveal to you right now, which is I don't know how to fill out forms. I don't know how to keep track of paperwork. I don't know how to maintain systems. I'm exceptional at creating solutions, but I can't remember the solution I created or where I wrote that down or how to retrace my steps to it. So these are the things that have kept me from being all I could be work-wise. And if I ever found someone that could help in that way, I'm sure there's so much more I'm capable of. And I'm, for the first time in my life, thinking about trying to find that person. I was just really that straight up front about it. And I also had to confront the fact that I have such self-judgment about myself. But one of my defenses is that I judge those things I don't do well as stupid. I mean, like the things that have to be done as stupid, which when I ask someone for help on those things, I feel very apologetic. Like, I'm so sorry to have to ask for your help. I'm really sorry I can't do this myself. And I remember someone I was once using for some help say, when you apologize for giving me things that I'm good at doing, it makes me feel bad about my skill set because you have such low esteem of these things, these tasks, which I'm really good at and I like to do. So it would be much easier if you just asked me to do it rather than asking like you're asking me to eat dirt, And
I love the idea too of instead of saying I'm sorry, say thank you.
Yes. So I had gotten that insight. And so I just sort of said openly to Jessica, like, I can't schedule. I shouldn't be in charge of logistics. I can't fill out forms. I can't find or, create systems for keeping paper or find it. And I want much more for you and from you. But those are things that if we partnered, however unfair it seems, that I'll do none of those. Because I live in a very egalitarian world in my world. Like it's all about flattening the hierarchy and all that. So it's like very uncomfortable for me to be the boss, very uncomfortable for me to give away the job I don't want to do to keep the job I do want to do. And I just said, that's what I need.
Let me ask you about that. So you have the egalitarian idea. Do you identify kind of as a feminist in any ways?
Yes, I do.
So when I think of feminism, I identify as a feminist. It is not about egalitarianism. It's about choice. It's about, this is what I want to do, right? This is what I don't want to do. And so if that means that like, I don't want to do the paperwork, right? Because that's not my strength, right? I do want to do this because this is my strength. To me, that's embracing feminism. That's about like owning
that's a
your
really
stuff.
Good frame. Mm-hmm. And I guess when I pair that with what that other person said to me, when she said, it makes me feel bad when you seem to diminish the value of what I'm doing because you don't like doing it. Like, it's like, I wasn't trying to diminish her, but I was sort of saying, I hate this stuff. This stuff is stupid, And so then when I'm clarifying, like, I can't or shouldn't be responsible for these things because we won't be successful. Someone else could and should be responsible for these things because it's essential. When I put it that way, that the work that I can't do is essential, and yet I can't do it.
And that's about seeing your value, and I think this is so true for so many of us who have different areas where we really struggle. It's so easy for us to focus on that instead of, here's this like enormously complex issue, and I can see the solution like that, right? Like where it doesn't even feel effortful. So it almost feels like cheating, right?
Right.
And, one of the big insights that I've had over the last probably decade is that, work doesn't actually have to feel hard.
Right.
Right. It could feel fun, right? And if you're doing it right, like you're learning how to sort of change that ratio of where most of what you're doing is the stuff you like and that you're good at, and less and less of what you're doing is the stuff that you're not good at and you don't like.
And I think that's so true. And I was just thinking about sort of the way Jessica and I have, she does do the practice work with me as well. So she's in the room and helping people, but she's got a broader set of skills, right? And I think about there are things that I still need to do, but I will put off till there's urgency. I'll make it stressful. But we have another plan for that, which is she does a ride along. She sits with me. It's like I have to be the one to do it, but she can be right there. She can help me get over the hurdles. She can help when I have a tech issue or question or it becomes hard, or she uses her hands and I use my brain. We get it done that way. So sometimes it's dividing the work and she does certain work. Other times it's doing work together and me saying, I need an adult study hall. I need accountability. Yeah. I need someone to sit with me, and I need a proctor or someone I can call and go, where's tech support? I'm having trouble, or I don't understand what this question is, or why did this thing pop up? I can't get it to go away, and it's in the way of the screen I'm trying to get to. Just so many things that just, and I think when you have ADD and you experience life as so stressful around all of these unexpected challenges, that you just get you feel so defeated so quickly when you felt the urge to move forward, and all of a sudden all these things keep tripping you up, like you were describing, people tripping over each other. It's like, it's such a familiar feeling of fatigue that the older you get, the shorter the distance is from recognizing it's happening to already your shoulders dropping and your head dropping and going like, oh my God, this is happening again. So I just feel like my willingness to seek help and my ability to get help happened just in time, because I'm 61 now, but this was happening when I was in my late 50s. And I'm like, could I retire? Could I possibly retire? Because I can't deal with this anymore. It should be more fun than this. Yeah. I care about the work, but this is too hard and I'm growing too weary of my own limitations. So I'm just so grateful that before my career ended, I experienced what I was capable of with the support that I needed, understanding the way my brain works. And increasingly, I love my brain. And I find that, as I mentioned in the intro that you read, it makes me really good at helping people that have this issue as well. I'm sure you find that as well.
Empathy is so important with connecting.
And I find so many people that I'm coaching are coming to coaching because they're struggling with something, but they don't know the neurodivergence. And I'm hearing these patterns of procrastination and disorganization, and they think they're needing time management and they're needing discipline and and I'm like, is this something you've considered? Might you look into this? I've had so many people come back to me and say like it was such a major breakthrough in their life when they were looking in the wrong place for the solution to what they consider their failings, when they had a condition that needed to be addressed more responsively. They just didn't know it. And so it is really helpful to hear with those ears, because people who don't know, and they're just swimming in it and living it. And it's hard.
Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit about some mindset stuff around asking for help. So we will be right back. Hey, I got a question for you. Do you have a room that you've been meaning to start decluttering? Has it been a while since you've cleaned out the fridge, or maybe your laundry's backing up? What's on your to-do list for today or this week? If you only had someone to work with, would it maybe motivate you to get started? If you think that you would benefit from having some real-time accountability working beside other adults with ADHD who are also working on things that they want to get done, then join us at Adult Study Hall, our online body-doubling co-working community. That's at adultstudyhall.com. Membership gives you access to our 24/7 drop-in room, or ASH 24/7, for on-demand body doubling around the clock, no matter your time zone. You'll also be able to join us in our Adult Study Hall Plus, or ASH Plus sessions, themed and guided sessions for anything from creative work to anything career-related, decluttering, writing, general task busting, working out, and more. Most of our ASH Plus sessions happen weekly, so you can check in on your progress every week. And on the third Thursday of the month, I lead our monthly Pomodoro dance party, where we have 2 50-minute work blocks, each followed by a 10-minute dance party. And I'll be your DJ. The next one is on Thursday, February 16th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. From our 24/7 drop-in room to our facilitated sessions at adultstudyhall.com, you won't have to tackle your toughest to-dos alone. It's only $19.99 a month, and it's free to try for the first week, and it works best when you actually try it. Really, come try it out. Get signed up and join the bodybuilding community built just for us. That's adultstudyhall.com. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our patrons at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Thank you to Bianca V, Rosie B, Ramona N, Molly C, and Dale H, who all recently joined our Patreon community at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. When you join us at $5, $10, or $25 a month, you can get ad-free episodes of this show in a private podcast feed. So if you're a patron but you haven't set that up yet, click on the membership tab at the top of the page at patreon.com/ADHD Rewired. Click on the button on the bottom that says listen on other podcast apps, and just follow the directions from there. At $10 a month, you can also get recordings of our monthly coaching calls, which are kind of like our monthly Q&A episodes that we do on the podcast, but they are only available to our patrons in that private podcast feed. That's at $10 a month. At $25 a month, you can join me for our monthly coaching call that we do every fourth Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Our next monthly coaching call is on Tuesday, February 28th at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. I really want to thank you all again to all of our listeners and our patrons who help keep this podcast independent. Your support helps maintain things like equipment, editing, storage, backup, hosting services, and more. So if it's in the budget for you right now and you'd like to support our work with a monthly contribution from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Remember, perks start at just $5 a month with ad-free episodes, and support can start at any amount. That's ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thank you. All right, we are back. You know, you and I, we both have full-time help with our team. And I also know that is, in some ways, there's absolutely a thing of privilege that I can afford to do that. When you were making that decision to hire help, did you wrestle with that idea of like, can I really afford this? Or did you look at it as like, I can't afford not to?
Well, it's a funny thing. I guess because COVID was happening and there was almost no work happening, I was wondering whether I was going to check out or check back in a new way, right? So there was a decision point. And Jessica showed up in my life during that COVID period. The funny thing was that she was looking for a change in her life, and the only thing I had to offer her was housing. So we traded her services for half-time while I helped her find another half-time remote job. And then I traded her housing to compensate her because I had no money. I had no income. Wow. I had no work, really. I had very little work at the time.
I love that creative thinking. I mean, that's awesome.
That's the upside of the downside, right? And the really interesting thing is that I had become really excited by my awareness that, just to jump into a little bit, conflict resolution is sort of a skill set that I teach. And it was so clear during sort of the summer of social justice reckoning and health policy debates and things that we were really struggling to find a way to talk to each other. And I kept thinking, God, if there's ever a time my skills are essential, it's now. But I'm curious, I'm not even using my skills. I'm unregulated and rattled and losing my temper with people and don't want to talk to them anymore. And it's like, wow, if that's happening to me, what is happening out there? And so I got really committed to the idea of being of service in this moment with the skills that I have. And out of that came a new training design that integrated brain science about stress and stress reactions, connection and emotional literacy, and mindfulness. Because what I had come to believe was that even people like me who have these skills don't put the skills to use if in the moment you needed to notice this was the moment to use them. you weren't mindful enough to be awake to that moment, and you went down a different path. And then it feels a little too late, and it's already been said, or you already walked away, or whatever. So I started thinking about the first step in conflict resolution really should be mindset and mindfulness and preparation of yourself and your intentions and reflection on what's going on in the conflict before you open your mouth or think that you know what needs to be done or said. So this was for me a new innovative idea of merging mindfulness, brain science, and conflict resolution into a new package of training. And I had all these ideas now, but now they needed to be adapted to a technology environment because that was likely to be the format. And that's not how I've taught. So between the need for technology support and I had a whole enterprise in mind that was very different from what I had been doing. And so I needed a new set of skills, and Jessica came with a set of skills that was more aligned with the work I was about to start doing. So I had little work, but I had a big idea, and I was excited about carrying it forward. And she was willing to join forces with me in exchange for housing and my help in her finding another part-time job, which we have now abandoned the other part-time job so that she's working with me full-time. And that project, those trainings are up. It exists. It's called Wiser Conflict and Wiser Coaching and Wiser Collaboration. It's a series of trainings, and we're getting a lot of good reaction from it. And I'm feeling really good about what I'm putting out into the world right now. Is it targeted towards like businesses? It's actually for everybody. People can reach it individually through our websites, and we're designing an asynchronous training that can be done on people's own time. We work with teams, we work inside organizations, and so it's for. I once sat down when I first came to Hawaii with a banker. My husband had a big deal job. And so they said, would your wife, she's a business person, would she like to meet with a banker? I'm like, what would I possibly need to meet with a banker for? I didn't have a business that needed that kind of thing, but I thought, I'll do that. So I sat down with them, and they had a portfolio of paper in front of them. And they said, so tell me a little bit about your market. And I said, this is when I was just starting Mapping Change, and which is a change management and skills organization. And I said, my market is the bottled water market. He started scrambling through his papers. He's like, I'm confused. I thought I had read that you did some kind of professional service. And I said, I do. That service is dealing with conflict. But it strikes me that it's the same market as bottled water because until a few years ago, this was in the 90s then, until a few years ago, nobody had put water in a bottle and sold it. Water came out of a spigot, it came out of a spring. Like, you didn't sell water per se, individual. I said, but once somebody put water in a bottle, everybody has a need for bottled water sometime. Some people have a need for bottled water on a regular basis, but I don't know the demographic that has no need for bottled water. So yeah, I think my market for dealing with conflict. Did you make that up on the spot? I did. That's amazing. I didn't know how to answer it. That is amazing. So when you say to me, who's this for? It's for everybody, because it's for everyone who's in relationship. And if you're in relationship, even with yourself, because sometimes you are divided on yourself, you have two minds, you have more than one perspective you're holding simultaneously. And so, it really is a skill for everybody. And then there are contexts in which it's really essential for successful functioning that they share that skill set and they use it regularly. So this Wiser Conflict was really born out of the COVID moment, the social justice moment, and the moment of great strife in our country. And I thought these skills are more important than ever. And I have to overcome my limitations to be able to show up in this moment and be of service. And so that was part of the mindset. And then having someone willing to sort of love me anyway, love who I am and what I do and what is possible here, but feel lifted up by the fact that they are essential to me, not diminished by the fact that there are jobs they don't even love doing that I need them to do because I can't do them. They might not love doing them. I can't do them. And that's the difference.
When it comes to the conflict resolution, I think it's really common that we hear people with ADHD can be quite conflict avoidant. What are maybe a couple ideas, tips, or strategies that might be helpful for people with ADHD who do have a tendency towards conflict avoidance?
That's a great question. And
You're probably like, we have another hour here because that's a tough one to answer in a few minutes.
I guess what I would say is I think for people with ADHD, having conflict skills is essential because you create conflict. You are a little conflict creator, whether you mean to be or not. And so I think we are always living in fear of the next conflict we don't even know we created, but it's out there and they're having thoughts about us, or we're going to be confronted by something we're caught off guard about and defensive, or we're going to be apologizing and yet we feel compelled to apologize, yet there's another side to the story, but it doesn't seem like anybody wants to hear it. So I think that I think that people with ADHD would be wise to expect that they need really polished skills for both understanding their own internal emotional state, because it's triggering to fail, it's triggering to be frustrated, it's triggering to struggle. And I think that, we need skills for taking responsibility for that, because when we don't deal with it internally, we put it out on others. So that's the first thing. That's that mindfulness, getting ready to reflect and get real about what's happening for you internally. And then in doing that, you can discern wise action. Some of it might be action you need to take. Some of it might be a conversation you need to have. But when you have to have that conversation, to be able to be empathetic for how you challenge people without being necessarily overly apologetic, but being empathetic, acknowledging what frustration you might have created or how you might have added extra effort to something, being willing to be revealed about when it feels safe, have the discretion and the mindset to know, hey, this is really hard for me. Like, I've gotten really comfortable saying I shouldn't be left to handle scheduling. And it's been uncomfortable in certain professional settings to sort of make a reveal that I shouldn't be left for a task that seems like anybody should be able to do it, but I won't do it well. And so we should find somebody else to do that. So having the assertiveness skills to directly, confidently say the truth of something, ask for the help that you need. I just think that having conflict skills for people with ADHD is really essential, because you are a gift to the world with that challenge, and you are occasionally a burden. And it doesn't help if people don't know what you're dealing with or what you're struggling with. So finding ways that you can comfortably, appropriately take the risks that might be involved in sharing certain things about your capacities or limitations is a responsibility I think we have, rather than leaving people in the dark about why are you not returning a phone call or whatever it is that you tend to do. So I think that's good relationship skills, and having the ability to pause as you're getting, for a lot of us, we don't actually take action till we're overwhelmed.
Until it hurts.
And that's till it hurts. And that's a really tough place to be a good communicator from when you're in a state of overwhelm. And so if all of a sudden you finally woke up and said, I'm going to finally do the project I've been putting off and it's due Monday, team, I need you to show, like, your anxiety shouldn't translate into anxiety expressed to them. Like, you need to do the inner work to understand what's going on for you emotionally, what you want to do about that, and what, if any of that, needs to be shared, conveyed, or communicated to others, and how to ask for the help that you're going to need, how to celebrate the support that you get. Like, there's a lot of value to using the communication skills you learn in conflict resolution, whether it's being a good listener or being a good assertive speaker, to both be grateful, to be in relationship, to mend and tend when something has torn as a result of the inevitable things that happen. So I just think it's a really powerful skill set to have. And so it's the bottled water market, but I certainly think inside that market is the ADHD community. They should really be taking a big dose of both mindfulness and capacity for managing conflict.
Marina, what final thoughts do you want to leave listeners with? And then if you would leave them with your website as well.
Oh, thank you. I was thinking about this conversation today, and I guess there's two big thoughts I hope you heard. One is get the help you need. The other one is don't wait so long to do it. Because I remember, if you're in Office, the TV show, The Office, when they finally revealed the documentary that, the fake documentary that PBS was making about them, Pam, the character, says about loving Jim for 9 seasons or whatever before they ever kissed. She says, I was so sad when I watched this, to realize how much time I wasted. And I hope anyone watching this will go for what they want much sooner than I did. And so I would say, I hope that people on hearing this, I'm so grateful it happened for me finally, that I've got the support and I'm comfortable in my skin and I'm comfortable in my neurodivergence. I hope others come to that experience much sooner in their life than when they're 60.
Marina, thank you so much. So your website's mappingchange.com.
Yes, it is.
And is that the best place where people can kind of learn about you? And
yeah. And my individual email is marina@mappingchange.com. But if you can also reach me through that. There are resources, offerings, trainings, and even a chance just to meet with me for just-in-time coaching, sort of a one-off without a commitment of long-term, just to have a chance. There's also, a free fit conversation if somebody was interested in exploring more about this. Thank you for the chance to plug that.
Well, I'm thrilled that you came back on and kind of rose from the ashes, right?
I did.
And so kudos for your courage and congratulations on your ongoing success with kind of owning your brain, because it's the only brain we got, so we might as well own it.
It gets funnier and more amusing to me all the time as I get more honest about it. It's a beautiful thing and it's a beast to manage, but it's the task I've been given in this life. And I'm happily doing it now that I know what I've got to work with, and I've found help to support me through it.
Well, Marina Piscolish, thank you so much for spending the time with us. And it was wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you for all you're doing to help bring this. You brought me to this awareness. So thank you right back at you. So I really appreciate what you've built for the world and how you've supported me personally. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks for saying that. And you're welcome. This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD reWired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD reWired podcast network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD reWired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD reWired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you are a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD reWired podcast network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD reWired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tibbers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.